Salesforce announced their earnings yesterday after the market closed, and I wanted to go over their announcement, update my analysis on Salesforce, and let you know if I think this is a good buy or a sell for my portfolio. I'll also share with you my price target on Salesforce. So, Salesforce is the leader in their segment within software. It has been a very successful company for a long time, profitable, and generates tremendous free cash flow. In the past year, they've really focused on getting their AI business off the ground, and they tout how that business is growing over the last 12 months and where they're headed. AI most definitely is going to be a part of Salesforce's strategy going forward. Their fourth quarter revenue went up 8%, which is decent. They continue to grow. It is a very large company. So that is their sales growth. When we look at their full year sales growth, it was 9%, which is a little higher than the fourth quarter. So maybe the fourth quarter showed a slowdown, and now we're seeing um, Salesforce, their stock is selling off. It might be that that fourth quarter showed somewhat of a slower growth rate than the whole annual rate. Overall, they bought back shares, which is good, and their free cash flow has been tremendous. Free cash flow of 12.4 billion, up 31% in the full year, fiscal year 2025 now, because they just closed their year at the end of January. So that is impressive. Very good free cash flow from Salesforce. Overall, their guidance is a tad bit weak. They're looking at slowing down a little further if they come in at guidance, since they were a 9% grower top line revenue in 2025 fiscal year. We're now in fiscal year 2026. So that, I think, is part of what the market is seeing as being too pessimistic. If you are growing your AI business, then why the heck isn't that top line getting bigger? I think that's the big question for Salesforce. When I value the CRM Salesforce stock, I get a 67% discount. When I focus on their cash flows, I create a forecast of cash flows and I discount all those future free cash flows that this company is going to produce. And I get a value of all those cash flows to today's value of $484 billion. That's a big chunk of change. I add cash and take away debt. I get to an equity value of the company of 489 billion, but their market cap is 294. So there is a big separation between the stock price and the value of those cash flows the company is producing. They grew cash flows by 31% in the last full completed year, showing that these guys are just generating a lot of cash and they're probably going to buy back a lot of shares. If we look at cash, the price target I have on Salesforce is $512 per share, but their stock's trading at 307. The earnings per share is a little bit of a different story, but I don't depend on earnings per share as much. Their earnings per share is expected to be $10.13. Give them a P of 26. Grow that by about 8%. It gives me a 7% premium on the stock. That based on earnings per share, the stock is really worth 284 and it's trading at 307. So this may get a little bit of a haircut as the stock trades today. And the news about the sales growth not being as good as it should be, I think, is affecting the stock. I blend the two. That way I take 2/3 of the free cash flow method, 1/3 of earnings per share to arrive at a blended method of 42% discount. I think the Salesforce business is very valuable. It has very strong moats. CRM created those moats by being the best software company for the customer experience, for Salesforce automation, for service, support. Therefore, they have a very strong moat. Customers, it's very hard for these big businesses to change software. So Salesforce has a very strong reoccurring revenue stream, which is why their cash flow is growing so darn fast. That is a sign of a strong, desirable business. So I'm a buyer of Salesforce. I'm going to accumulate shares of this valuable business. And if the market would like to discount it further, I would like to send my thank you in advance. I will buy those shares and add to my position. The Salesforce stock is trading down about 2.5%. We're about a half hour before the market opens on February 27th. Again, it's a market cap of 294 billion, forward PE 27. Analysts think it's a buy and it's discounted by 20%. So they agree with me that this is a discounted stock. Over the past year, the stock is only up 5%. So it's underperformed the market over the last 5 years. It's done okay, 69%. It's not bad. It's not good either. It's okay. I would like to have seen them be above 100%. They are a technology company, and they have very good fundamentals. The market just doesn't really like them a whole lot. It's good enough, especially if you look at the return that some investors have probably achieved if they bought in 2022. You more than doubled your money, so that looks really good from that perspective. If you bought at the right time, you made a lot of money on Salesforce. Their historic growth has been really good. As they get bigger, the percentage drops down because the top line number just keeps getting bigger. The law of big numbers, it's hard to grow by the same rate continuously. And again, their free cash flow is, I mean, I tip my hat to these guys. They have really grown that cash flow. And I'm willing to bet that that really high watermark of free cash flow is going to catch the attention of a lot of investors. I mean, this is kind of a Warren Buffett special right here. High free cash flows, buy back shares. It's a very good looking stock. And their gross margins, 77%. See how they've expanded those gross margins. Again, they have that strong moat. So they have a little price power. They can increase prices on customers. And of course, their scale, each additional unit sold is less expensive because they can do it with the same resources and people that they have in place. Profit margin of 16, that looks good. And then free cash flow margin of 32%. Holy smokes. That looks great. So good job, Salesforce, on your fundamentals. When I look at the forecast that other analysts have, and 37 analysts cover this stock, so plenty of eyeballs on this stock. Some analysts are very optimistic. Maybe they're looking at the same cash flow I'm looking at. And some are a little bearish, and they think the stock's going to trade down over time. But on average, they believe it's about 20% discounted. Looking at their growth, they're going to be growing close to double digits, close to that 10% mark, which is very good for a company this big. I mean, we're talking about a big company. And what's interesting is Intuit announced yesterday, and they had 13% growth, and they're a much smaller company than Salesforce. These guys are growing nearly 10%, and their stock's selling off, which is always kind of interesting how the market will trade stocks. Remember, in the short term, the stock market, it's a voting machine. It's a popularity contest. That's the right flavor for that week. Over the long term, it's a weighing machine. It'll weigh that value, those free cash flows. So it might be an opportunity to really look at Salesforce as a long-term investment. Earnings per share are going to expand, grow really nicely, grow faster than revenue, as expected. Strong moat, very good scale in this business. So those numbers really look good to me, really look good. A total of 10 super investors are invested in Salesforce. So it's a valuable business. It creates great profits, great cash flows, and super investors are really into the stock. Here's a list of those investors across the board. It's none that I follow all that closely, but it's good to see that these respected investors are in Salesforce. Bill Nygren added to his position, and Viking Global also added. The others did reduce their position, and they continue to be investors in Salesforce. So again, I am a buyer of Salesforce. I think it's a terrific business with a strong moat, and believe that over time, this business is going to be worth a lot more. So I'll add shares. I'll thank the market for a discount if it decides to sell off the stock today and pick up some shares. So that's my video on Salesforce. I hope you found it interesting, and I appreciate you watching. Good luck with your investments.